my name is John Lyons from San Francisco, and I'm with my uncle Gene Lyons from Lexington, Kentucky. And we're actually, it's Christmas Day 2004 at the Taybacks in Barrington, Illinois, and we're glad that Gene could join us and save me a trip to Lexington to get this interview done. So we'll start it off.
Okay.
Welcome to Chicago, Gene. The first kind of question is going to be an outline of certain things that I've asked all the other brothers, and there will be simple answers until we get into your philosophy of life, which comes later. Maybe you could give us your full name and your date of birth.
Eugene Thomas Lyons, born May 6, 1931.
1931. So that makes you number 3, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Was there anyone in the family that you were named after that you're aware of? Is Eugene a family name?
I don't know.
Don't know. Okay. Do you know how old your parents were at the time you were born?
No, I don't.
Okay. If you were to think back to, and we've talked about this earlier, what do you think, remember as your first job on the farm? The first job, not your ongoing job.
Oh, I don't know. Probably picking eggs from chickens. Probably.
Right. And later on, I think you mentioned you had other jobs. What were some of your permanent jobs on the farm?
Milking the cows was the permanent one, and then did many other things too. But that came twice a day. Rain or shine, and unless you had a broken hand or something, well, you still had to do it. So.
Yeah. How many cows did you have?
I think there were 5.
5. And you had more chickens than cows, I assume.
Well, we talked before, our brother Frank took care of the chickens during the week, but I had to help him clean the chicken house on Saturdays, and so that's always been kind of something I never quite understood, but I went along with it, of course.
Because you were told to do that. Now, he obviously didn't help you with the cleaning out the barn then.
Right.
Okay, that's good. When you were a boy on the farm, horses were the major form of power. Did you have a tractor when you were a child?
There was a tractor they used for certain things, but most everything done with horses. We had 2 teams of horses.
Yeah. Did you?
Mickey and Dobbin and Pat and Pete.
Right. And did they do the same work, or were there different jobs that they might have done?
Well, as I would call it, just a matter. They didn't necessarily. I don't remember any difference between what the teams did, but the Mickey and Dobbin were more draft type horses, as I recall.
And the other horses, I mean, were they just work horses, or were they?
They were work horses. One thing I might mention, we were always very aware of getting injured with a scratched or with a nail or something, getting tetanus, because I don't remember the horse, but supposedly one died from tetanus, and so we were always aware of, I guess we had to get tetanus shots if we got puncture or anything like that.
Right. Well, when you were first able to go to school, I assume you went to the schoolhouse next door.
Yeah.
Did you finish 1 through 8 there? Is that right?
Yeah.
And what was that like when you were there? Good memories of that?
I know that some of the school teachers were probably about the same age as some of the older boys.
Yeah.
And I know some of them were better than others. But looking back, I suppose so much of the learning tip with English was from my mother that wasn't covered by some of the school teachers.
Yeah.
But I know that we didn't know at the time. We always hated to come home at noon because we got a hot meal, and we liked when the storm came so we could take our lunch.
Oh, really? So you can stay.
So that was the opposite, but we thought we wanted to, but we came home and did lunch. And that's, of course, one thing at noon, the little kids got to play games and things.
Did you ever have to do chores at the lunch hour, or you just came home and ate and went back to school?
Home and ate and went back, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a long ways to go, of course, which is a stone's throw away.
Right. Do you remember roughly the size of the farm when you were growing up?
It was about 120 acres when we first were there.
Yeah.
And then Father acquired another 60 acres from the Louis Johnson family, I think. I think he had a heart attack, and they kind of got scared when they came to California, and they sold, as I recall, the 60 or 80 acres that we sold.
Yeah. I know you said you had milk cows and chickens. What other kind of livestock did you have at that time? Do you remember? Were there other
Well, there were hogs and beef cattle.
Yeah. And the crops were the same, basically. It was corn and beans and...
No beans at that time. Beans weren't. We had one neighbor later years when I was a kid had soybeans, but that was kind of a novelty.
Right.
No. It's just corn and alfalfa and oats, as I recall.
Oh, okay. When I had the good fortune of knowing your mother, my grandmother, for a long time, she obviously had some good rules, and I was just curious if you remember any of the house rules. Were there chores inside the house that you had to do when you were growing up?
Well, some of us had to help my mother a lot. And,
yeah.
I know I think it was kind of passed down. It seemed like I had to do it more than the other older brothers. I don't quite remember, but I remember when Jack came along, I was really glad that he was the one who kind of took over. Because we had to help with the washing and sort of help someone, meal preparation, washing dishes. But you said rules. Of course, there were rules like taking your shoes off. And,
yeah.
How my mother did it, I don't know. I know that on Saturdays it was a big deal. She would wax the linoleum floor in the kitchen, or we would help do that. And she put papers down so it would be clean for Sunday morning anyway. And after that, of course, it went downhill.
Right. So at least for a few hours, it was a clean kitchen.
But looking back, it was very structured. It had to be. And you wouldn't go to bed at night before everything was picked up,
right.
Clothes and everything, and then so it was very organized.
Yeah. What we're celebrating Christmas today, and I was wondering if you could think back on any Christmas holidays that maybe Christmas holiday traditions that you recall as a boy with your life on the farm.
Oh, I don't know. I know one thing that we typically open presents. Then on Christmas Eve, maybe, I don't know what time it was, 6 or 7 o'clock, and then we'd go to bed for a while and got up for midnight mass, and then come home, and it was typical to have oysters, stew or soup. Right. And the neighbors' whole bars usually came over after mass. So it was probably 2 or 3 in the morning before we got to bed. Then. How
would you get to town at that time? When would you take you had a car at that time?
Yes. Well, no, my father had the car.
Right.
And of course, not this Christmas, but typically we'd go to 6 o'clock mass on Sunday morning. In bad weather, we'd get there much earlier than it wasn't bad because it'd start earlier. Right. And many times we always talked, we would get to mass living 4 miles away, with some of the city people didn't. I don't remember, we probably did, but I bet we never missed mass because of the weather. Right. And so that plus some other things, I think is why I've always been a stickler for being on time. Or some of my coworkers I work with, we do work like horse farms, but I usually get there early. Right. Right. Because to me it was
a sign of respect too, but it was also how your dad made you guys get up and go.
My mother too, I'm sure.
Do you recall any other specific maybe events that occurred on an ongoing basis? I'm sure there were sicknesses and injury in your family. Is there anything that you had as a child that you recall being injured or ill, or any of your brothers or sister?
Well, of course, the big thing was, your fathers probably talked about with being hurt by this cow. Right. I'm sure that he's talked about that story.
How do you remember how you were probably 3 years old then? Is that right?
Oh no.
Were you older? I forget how old he was.
I'm guessing 7 or 8 or 9 or something.
Okay. Were you there when it happened?
Well, yes.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about how that happened?
What I remember is this Holstein cow had a calf, and I don't know yet. Remember why it was in this alleyway of the barn. Was in the middle of the barn, had these 2 large sliding doors, and I know after school, my father and I went in the barn to see it, and the cow was in the back of that alleyway with its calf. Your brother went in, then I went in, and our dog came in, at least partway behind us, and the cow trying to protect the calf. I believe it was after the dog. Right. And knocked your father down. I remember running outside and screaming, and my father was at another barn. It was quite a ways away, and it was a very windy day. I think my voice carried, and he heard me screaming and came and got your father out, and of course he got pretty badly injured on his jaw, and they thought he had a concussion. He didn't, but the cow was wasn't going after us, I don't believe, as much as it saw that dog was trying to take the cat.
Well, it gave him his distinctive good looks that he has now.
Yeah, he's got this
the lopsided head.
The signature scar on his cheek.
Right. Speaking of your dog, did you personally have any pets when you were growing up, or were they just the farm pets?
I remember a pig named General MacArthur. That's what I remember.
A pig?
Yes.
General MacArthur?
Well, named after General MacArthur in the Civil War, but I don't remember that. Maybe it was one we raised, but it was stayed in the hog lot, but as I recall, it was a pet. I don't remember much about it. Right. We mostly had communal pets.
When you were, was 4-H around when you were young?
Yes.
Were you active in it?
Yeah.
Was there any special?
We had calves, and typically as we got a bit older, when we were younger, we'd break them to lead, as I remember. And we had these, what they call 4-H achievement days once a year, and you go show your animals. And when they were a judge, it wasn't just a matter of the looks of the animals. They had been trained to be not running off or something.
Oh, really?
But as we got older, I do remember that about the last minute we started hook them to a tractor and drag them around to try to break them to lead, as opposed to when we were younger.
Pulling them yourself?
Well, we taught them to lead better. So.
Right, it was a little easier.
Yeah.
And that was something, did anyone ever, it was a local county type of thing, right?
Yes, then they had, because I remember going to the state fair once, so I must have been competitive within the county, maybe, I don't remember.
Right.
I went to state fair, I remember the state fair had a pretty general calf and sleeping with it, laying down but they weren't really stalls, but they were like stalls.
Right.
But,
That's
but it was good for the kids.
Yeah. Now, what would happen to that calf after the fair? You kind of just fattened him up and sent him off to the feedlot? You didn't keep him in your backyard as a pet?
Well, as I recall, at the county level, maybe the state too, the champion calf would be sold for a very high price. Money go to charity or something, and then it was slaughtered, but I don't remember what happened to it. But it was kind of the thing to raise money, I think. And it was sold at an inflated price. Yeah. I don't remember what happened to me.
Yeah. Obviously, your mother and father valued education to a high degree. Do you know why that was in each case? Was it their parents that instilled that in, or is it just something they came across themselves?
I don't really know. It was. I do know that it was pushed so much, probably more by my mother than father, because I guess it was an unusual family. Why my mother had a college education for women at that time. It was unusual. My father, started high school a couple of times, but never could finish because I had a woman help farm. But everything was oriented toward education, and I don't know that it was. I think it just kind of plugged in. Yeah. That was the way to get ahead. Right. But specifically, I don't know. I think two things were plugged into us, for right or wrong. One was this drive or whatever to keep working, and the other is to try to, that education was the way to do it, but it was encouraged, and probably ways we didn't know about. Right. And then as the older ones, there was some group pressure, I suppose, for the younger ones to go because the older ones did, but it was certainly encouraged, but I don't know what the psychology was, but obviously it was plugged in.
Besides your mom and dad, you had a lot of family in the area as well as within a day or two. Were there any other influences in your life or recollections of cousins, aunts, uncles that made an impact on you, or at least a memory that you think about every once in a while?
Well, probably the three Donahue boys, Francis Donahue and Ruth, because we interacted so much, and they were more our age. I guess they were a little bit younger, but and then our cousin Catherine was, I guess she was Pat's age, but we interacted some. But that was a great family gatherings all the time. And that was, more contact with the parents of those kids. Like, I mean, my mother's brothers and sisters, and not so much with our father, because some of his family was no farther away.
A little farther away than, yeah. Was Uncle Bob, who I had a chance to meet a little bit, seems like he had a bigger role than some other people too. Is that accurate, or is it just kind of more later in life?
Well, Uncle Bob was the kind of Uncle Bob that we all wished we had. He's just a good old boy, just a wonderful guy, and he, well, his other brother Tom, for a while lived at Wagner, but the other ones were more distant. I mean, physically different locations, and so two things: Uncle Bob was very interactive, and secondly, because he was the youngest of that family, and we interacted a lot.
Yeah, that's nice. So after the farmhouse, you went to school in town for high school, and Pat was already there. He would have been junior when you were a freshman. He was a senior maybe, and Frank was there also. Yeah. How did you get to school every day and back? Did you stay in town after school, or did you come right back?
I think we came back. There was always a car. And I don't remember the reason that some of the younger ones went to parochial school was that there was a car being driven from the farm by somebody in high school to take them to secondary school.
Right.
Yeah, the farm kids were somewhat envied by the city kids because we had to get to school by car. There weren't school buses.
Right. So even though you lived in the farm, the car kind of made you a little more.
Well, of course, we had to come home after school because we had to do the chores and all that.
Right. Milk the cows.
That's right.
So this is quote unquote the fun section of the interview right now. So I know that this has been very fun up until now. So this will even be more fun for you and for your brothers when they get to see you uncomfortably being interviewed. So you know how David Letterman does his top 10 list, and so we're going to do this kind of with the top brothers list. And you don't have any time to think about it, and there are no right answers.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is the first brother or your sister, if that's the case that you want to throw out, you can say their names. So if you were to rank your brothers, who do you think was physically the strongest?
Oh, I don't know answer.
That's okay. That's fine. You don't have to answer. If you don't, you can say pass.
I would say that we were pretty equal because we grew up doing physical things, no matter what. So it was we weren't lifting weights.
Right.
The only weights we lifted were like putting on tractors,
right,
making heavier, so the wheels wouldn't slip when you're doing cultivating.
Right. Okay. Then who do you think was the smartest? And I don't mean just like who got the best got the most advanced degree, but who was the smartest guy naturally? Do you think?
I think we'd all have to agree that Pat was. It wasn't a matter of going to school to get educated. He was very sharp anyway, and he was a self-made person, and it's no question that the rest of us went to school, got our union cards, which helped in our career, but he did it on the job. And,
that's a great answer. Who do you think was the funniest?
Well, it's our brother Bob, of course.
Right. Okay. Who is the most serious? And you can say yourself. You can answer yourself to any of these questions.
Probably Tom.
Tom. Yeah. Who is there anyone that was the leader of the pack?
Well, Pat would be.
Right. Was there anyone that kind of blindly followed that maybe shouldn't have?
I don't know.
Okay. How about the mother's pet?
I do know that there were just neighbors named Bill and Bill Sample. I can't remember his wife. They didn't have any children, and they asked my mother one time if she favored one of the kids over another, and she was insulted that people didn't even think that could happen. You knew my mother enough to know that she meant it. That was an insult.
Right. Right. Well, I'm sure they didn't mean it that way, but that's a great answer. Yeah. Was there such a thing as a father's pet then? Did your dad?
Tom.
That's come up before.
You want to know what? You want to know what reason why? Tom was small for his age, and he's called derogatory called a runt or whatever.
Right.
But he was mechanically minded very early. He was out driving tractors and doing things other kids didn't do in the family. My father really,
Like that.
no question that he liked him. But the rest of us.
So
Edith Sample, sorry, was the neighbor's
Edith?
wife. Edith Sample.
Edith. So if some of these questions are going to be kind of to do with who was the best around the farm as a kid, so the best mechanic, do you think that would have been Tom too, or would it?
Well, I don't know, Pat. I don't know. Tom, probably Pat was. Pat was very mechanically minded. Tom was too, but he was younger and I wasn't
Right.
as much.
What about the best with the animals then, the individual livestock? Was there anyone that stood out as the best?
I don't know.
Who who do you think the best drinker of the brothers was?
I don't know. Never was allowed to drink with him. No, I don't know.
Okay.
I do know that kids now getting on drugs, and of course, in our day in high school, the big thing is going to have a couple of beers. But no, I don't know.
Okay. Well, then maybe as a side story, was there anyone that was in trouble more than others?
I don't. I think we got caught. Someone was.
You wanted to
I don't know.
be equally troublesome and equally good.
Yeah.
Was there a goody two shoes in the family that you thought was overly?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, then since no one really got into trouble, the next question might not be appropriate. But if hypothetically anyone ever got into trouble, was there anyone that could talk themselves out of that situation better than other brothers?
I don't know.
Maybe Bob.
Yeah, Bob.
All right. Well, so now when you think also about the work on the farm, you have to think about the entertainment at home, and we talked a little bit about holidays. But were there things that you did within the family? I know that there was a band that was put together. Did you participate in that?
No, because I left home with him.
Oh, so that was for the younger kids?
Service, yeah, the 4 younger ones.
Okay.
I always forgot I never them playing.
Well, then, you mentioned having the family out to the farm, or getting together, and the Donahos and the more extended family. Was that something that was regularly scheduled, or was there just a summer picnic that you'd have, or anything like that?
There were unions once in a while, but the big thing was, I suppose, to come, have the grandparents particularly come and visit. And usually those relatives like them lived in town, it was usually unannounced, but there were some planned things, but a lot of them were just spontaneous.
What about, we kind of touched on it a little bit, you mentioned hard work and education, but religion was obviously a big component of your life, and still is. You went to church every Sunday.
6 o'clock.
6
a.m.
Right.
Yes.
So you could get back and do your Sunday chores.
That's right.
And
cows had to be milked.
cows had to be milked and chickens had to be chickened. Were there any things you did at home as a family? Did you ever read the Bible together, or say the Rosary, or anything like that?
The big thing was Lent. We said, as I recall, we said the Rosary every night, and it was great penance to kneel down on the hard floor.
Nice.
It was a thin carpet too, and you thought the Rosary never get finished. As I recall, maybe it was passed around from one kid to another as to who
Led
was the leader. But and of course, there were very strict things at Lent about giving up something and this type of thing.
And the diet was strictly observed. And
yes.
Things like that.
One thing, sure anybody's mentioned, I always remember my father wore this kind of cloth badge with a Sacred Heart on it, pinned with a safety pin to his underwear, but several times it got washed and came out. I remember being kind of bleached out. But both sides were very religious.
Yeah.
And it was just very strict.
What, to kind of maybe switch gears a little again, do you remember your first time, either as a family or by yourself, when you left the farm, the radius that your life kind of was, that you went maybe to Sioux Falls or to Wagner or something like that? Does that ring a bell with you?
Well, course, Sioux City was about 60 miles away, and I was like,
2 days.
New York or something.
Yeah.
But I remember the big events every year was selling the cattle, usually. I think most of the time they were sold one time. But one time, us 3 older kids got to go down with them and stayed in a hotel room. I remember taking a bath we were in the bathtub and blowing water. That was one very memorable. I remember we were all in Australia. Other ones were older kids were quite small.
And what town was that in? In Omaha?
Sioux City.
In Sioux City. Oh, that was in Sioux City.
That's where the cattle were sold.
Okay, well that's a great memory. And how did they drive the cattle? Did you use a truck or train or?
Tuffy Brewer was his name, who had semis but hauled the cattle.
Oh, okay.
They'd haul them to the stockyards in Sioux City.
Okay.
Now they usually had commission companies that would buy them, and there was a guy named Charlie Carroll. Your father and he were great friends, and he would come. I think they kind of had time. He'd come and look the cattle over and decide if they were ready to sell. And I suppose I'm sure he got some money. Because I think when they're sold at the stockyards like that, they were sold through commission companies.
Right.
But selling the cattle, because that was a great source of income, was a huge deal.
Yeah.
If I could diverge a slightly.
Sure, of course.
I was in service, Coast Guard for 3 years, and of course it was the best thing in the world. I did was guard a desk for 3 years, but it was the best thing that happened, getting away and getting around some, and I decided certain things I wanted to do. And so I took aptitude tests in service, not for them, someone else to see what was the best thing to went into, and I ended up going into wildlife and different things. But I just also decided I wanted to prove myself that I could do something, so I decided to hitchhike home from Boston to South Dakota, and I had a ride for a couple of miles with a guy, and then I hitchhiked the rest of the way. I got stranded a couple of nights without rides, spending time in town. But anyway, I got a ride to Sioux City, and I had a suitcase of South Dakota bus or something on there, and it was actually dark, early evening, and this guy comes by in a Cadillac, stops, and wanted to know where I was going. I told him Yankton. He says, I have one of my trucks coming through in a few minutes, so I end up going to Yankton in a cattle truck. It was empty, and to Yankton to a gas station. And I called the folks, and they picked me up at 11 o'clock at night. And I thought
it was a fitting circle, right? You took the cattle one day, and you got taken home one day.
Well, it's many years later.
Yeah. Well, so maybe we could go down that road a little more. You graduated from high school, and
went to Yankton College for a year.
For a year, and then you were drafted?
No, well, I went to signed up because this was the Korean War broke out in July of 1950. I'd been out, high school year, and I was working for a car company, Nash Garage in Yankton. They sold Nash cars, working greasing cars and washing this type of thing. And one Saturday afternoon, 3 guys from high school who were in the National Guard. This might have been August or so. Said we're going to Omaha. This was on Saturday. Omaha. We're going to Omaha on Saturday morning to join the Coast Guard because they didn't want to get called up in the National Guard.
Oh.
And so we all 4 of us went down. I think it was 4 of us went to Omaha and joined up. Well, so many people were joining the Coast Guard. That took 2 months before I was called up. By that time, the National Guard was called. 2 were called up there. One of them in the Air Force. So anyway, I went in the Coast Guard for 3 years.
Right.
But the only reason I went in, I guess, was because these buddies were going to go, and of course it didn't happen.
But before you did that, you were at Yankton College for that year. Was there any a specific area of studying that you were?
I kind of went because it was family pressure to be going to college, and there has to be a good lawyer because I didn't flunk out of it very much. I almost did because it was liberal arts type courses. And,
right.
I had all the classes in the morning, and worked every afternoon and Saturdays at the Scribes. So it was, I had very little time to study. So I just didn't know what I wanted to do anyway. I was just kind of goofed off.
Were you still living on the farm at the time, or did you have an apartment?
Yeah,
okay, so you mentioned this aptitude test you took while you were in the service. What did it help you figure out?
I ended up going to South Dakota State and majored in wildlife, zoology, agriculture, but it was somewhat was a spin-off of taking this test, I think I came up think as a farmer and a fireman, and then maybe wildlife or something were some of the specialties, but it did. And I had no idea what I could do, how I really could do in school because I hadn't studied before.
Right.
But,
and it seemed as though once you got into something you were interested, did it come a little easier for you?
I think so. Well, and then I decided this was, I'd grown up, with those 3 years and realized that
True.
I was trying to prove something to myself, maybe other people. And it was interesting.
When you were in the Coast Guard, you were stationed in Boston the whole time, basically, or you did boot camp?
Most of the time. I went to boot camp at Cape May, New Jersey, and then went to Boston for I don't remember how long, and then 12 or 15 of us went to. I lost track of when it was. Anyway, we went to California to go to ammunition loading school and firefighting school.
Right.
And then went back to Boston. So, somewhere along the way, then ended up going to a service school in Groton, Connecticut.
Right.
And it was a yeoman's storekeeper school. Yeomen were kind of like secretaries, and storekeepers for stores and stuff like that. Right. And then was stationed back in Boston at the main office. I say I never did get in a ship, thank goodness, because I got seasick. But so I really worked. It was a district office. Did typing, mostly scheduling payment of bills on sheets of paper and things like this.
Well, I think that Jack mentioned that he enlisted himself to get part of the GI Bill. Was that part of your South Dakota State tuition? Was that?
Oh yeah, it was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually worked up there too. But and one of the best things when I was there was that I actually went year round to school, but there was a break. I actually went to summer school, but there was a break for a couple of months. And building the Gavin's Point Dam, and so I remember they paid more than anybody in the area. Jack and I actually worked out in the dam.
Right.
We got four something an hour or something. This was really something.
$4 an hour.
Something for something.
That's great.
Of course, it was terribly hard work, but anyway.
Yeah. So you graduated from South Dakota State, and what was your next move?
Well, as I say, I worked when I was going to school there, and one of the things I did was work in the zoology department. I also worked in whatever department was. They were working with bees, and I worked with plants and things. Anyway, this one guy in the zoology department was working on parasites of fish. He had all these frozen fish that I had to thaw out and collect parasites like the worms in them. And then, but through that, plus taking a course from him, I got interested in parasites, but I also was interested in wildlife. So I applied, I think, to 4 schools to work on a master's degree in parasitology. And I think I got accepted to all 4, but anyway, I ended up going to Kansas State.
Okay.
And it was one of the most wonderful things that ever happened because this man, Merle Olson, actually just died this year. You talk about influence on a person. He, in graduate school, there's some biology, but there are 2 philosophies. One is in graduate school, your mentor will help you. The other one is he'll tell you what you want done and you go work yourself. And that's what this guy was. But not learned much from the graduate students, but philosophically and everything else, we go to coffee, and he just influenced everybody so tremendously. But anyway, I worked on parasites of jackrabbits, which tied into level interest of the disease plus the animal.
Right.
And this is probably getting too long.
No. This is what we want.
And this man had a grant to work on jackrabbits in western Kansas because the farmers out there complained that they had irrigated wheat, and these jackrabbits all of a sudden, it seemed like there were millions of them, so to speak, were eating up the wheat. And so the idea was there was a multiple study of hormones and reproduction things of what was going on, so I worked on the parasites of them. Turned out that later on what really happened was there was a drought out there, and cattle had overgrazed the sand hills area, and the jackrabbits were starving, so they're out here eating
the raised crops.
Yes, and then as soon as it rained, then they dispersed back in.
So they went back to their natural habitat.
Yes.
After.
In fact, one species of worm I found was a new species, and a guy after me was going to try to work the life cycle out. But by the time that jackrabbits scattered back in, the prevalence of the worm was so low, they never could find what tried to transmit the worm. But anyway, that was...
No, that's interesting.
And
so that...
if I can jab around. So
sure.
then I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I never did like to give talks, and still don't, and talk and hear it. And most of the students, this guy's students, can't say went out for PhDs. I decided I didn't want to do it, at least for a while. So I went to Kentucky. There was a chance for a commercial job at a drug company, which paid more. But again, this major professor said that there's a guy in Kentucky that's just emerged in the last few years as a stunning parasitologist, working in cattle and horse and sheep parasites. So I went there for a year, and then.
And this was just an individual with the drug company, or was this at the University of Kentucky?
Well, I didn't. I had a chance for a drug company, but I didn't take that job.
Okay, I see. All right.
A major professor, Merle Hansen at Kansas State, told me that I'd probably learn more going to a university and work with this guy, and it turned out it was great. So I was there for a year, and Dr. Olson at Colorado State had contacted Dr. Olson or Dr. Hansen, Kansas State, looking for somebody about Alaska working parasites of fur seals. So Dr. Olson wrote me and said, did I want to go? And I said, no. So then a year goes by, and the major professor at Kansas State called me up and said that this kid, the guy from Colorado, got the rep, didn't work out, and do you want to go? I'm not sure if we can censor this, but I said, I'm not sure. I went back to school. He said, either shit or get off the pot. So I got off the pot and went up there. I actually went to Colorado State for 4 days. I went back to Yankton and went 4 days at Colorado State, where I went to Alaska with this guy, and the students all told me, don't go. He's a terrible person to work with. It turns out he was even worse than I thought. He's a wonderful person as a scientist, but
as a human, he didn't quite get it.
Oh, it was just terrible, but I could live through anything. So anyway, went through 3 years at Colorado State, and 13 months was up in Alaska. But it was very nerve-wracking, and the guy for a month or so didn't go back, and I could do what I wanted to do. He was at that end trying to work out the life cycle of this parasite, hookworm. But finally found it comes through the mother's milk, and that was had not been done before. So, anyways.
And why was that? I mean, specifically, that was a pretty important breakthrough that the mother could transmit.
Well, it turned out that there was the first demonstration of an immature worm, a larval worm, coming through the mother's milk and developing to adult and its nursing offspring. Since then, it's been found happens in dogs and humans and many other animals, but nobody really considered it before. There were some reports of maybe some immature worms coming through milk of animals, but it was never put together that how important this was. It was just so it was.
So, how old were you at this time when you finished your PhD at Colorado State?
30. It was 1963, so 32.
And then you graduate from Colorado State, and did you immediately go back to?
Yes, but I was there before a lower level position, and then one of the professors at higher rank had just left, so I went back.
It's a great opportunity then.
Yeah.
It's interesting that a kid from South Dakota would make his name in marine mammals that are thousands of miles away.
It's just been luck. I feel been very, very fortunate. I also feel been overachieved or something. Something shouldn't happen. It's just been maybe stupidity or whatever.
Well, sometimes it's being at the right place at the right time too.
Well, Louis Pasteur was a great biologist and scientist. Said, which it would fit with biology or anything, but he said success comes to prepared mind, because you'd have to know
to be
maybe
aware.
Somebody else pushes you or whatever, but you know, if you don't take a chance or whatever, or don't realize that, it's like Earl Nightingale was in radio and said you should keep a pad by your bed at night, because as you know about thoughts, you just write something down. It's true. But anyway.
Yeah.
I've just been very fortunate.
Well, it's interesting, and I wanted to ask you maybe not so much about the science itself, but you've obviously traveled in a lot of places that most humans have never or nor will ever travel. But when you think back upon it, is there a job that you had as a scientist that was the most difficult, the living conditions or the work itself, or something that you recall as really stands out as unique in that regard?
Unique?
Yeah. You know, besides living in a trailer or whatever it might be on an island off the California coast.
Well, I spent time out there, but Alaska was the hardest working with this man who I always respected, but it's just, you get thrown on an island like there, or even in California, it comes out pretty quick about people, whether they get along or don't get along.
Right.
I had another experience up there in Alaska with another guy, and sometimes people go on these islands and they're in charge of things, and they seem to assume power. And I think it's Lyons' stupidity, but I feel I'm not going to give up. And I've been through some pretty difficult situations, you know, stress-wise of those situations, but ended up, it prepares you to do most anything.
Yeah.
And so I said, we're not being on here, but
no, you're not.
When I was up in Alaska, there were a lot of things, wildlife students would come up there helping. That's when they still kill fur seals for furs. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people's names stand out, and I was watching TV one time about 10 years ago, and there was an authority, there's a wildlife program on elephant seals, and the guy's name was Bob D. Long. Now there's got to be a word that typifies words to remember. And so I contacted him. I said, well, you're the Bob D. Long, that I knew years ago in Alaska, and he was. And so we established contact, and since then, I've had several trips to California working with him on hookworms and seals, northern fur seals, California sea lions. So it's a small world. I just happened to watch the right program at the right time, or otherwise I never would have got involved with him. And I didn't go to any islands last year, but for 1996 through last year, made several trips. One time in 2002, we went for 7 or 8 months in a row following mortality. So anyway, it's always a small world about what happens, and it's just, it has to be good Lord.
Looking down on
and I don't think I was telling you, but I was telling your father that was a veterinary pathologist at Colorado State. I've worked with many times. He's got a DVM PhD. He's the world's authority in marine mammal diseases and many other things. And he's a wild rebel, has trouble at administration with the school, but I respect him as much as I've been in the world. He gets out in the field. And he said he quit telling people back at school how much fun he's having because they think he's screwing off. And I said, well, we're kind of birds with feathers, because it sounds crazy, but you're working blood and guts and mess, but it's just, maybe, I don't know what it is, but it's fun. Yeah. Even though you work very hard, so you're lucky to do something you like and get paid for it.
I remember one of the first memories I have of you was when we came, the first trip that I remember coming to visit you in Lexington. You were we must have come to visit you at school, and there was a 50-gallon drum, and there was a horse head in it that you had done some sort of I don't know, an autopsy on or something to just decipher what was there. And I remember looking in it and then looking at you as if it was no big deal, and I about lost my lunch. I'm surprised I didn't. Well, I want you to kind of maybe, I have a couple more questions as well, 2 more questions really. Is there one trip though, or one experience where you either thought, not that you were falling through the ice and the current was going to wash you away, but was there ever any time you feared, maybe for your life or for part of your life, that was a very difficult trip, whether you ran out of food or you didn't have clean underwear and something was going to find you? Or if not, that's okay too.
One experience, maybe 3 or 4 years ago on this island in California,
hi Kathy.
I was this research station where we are, do the work out there, there's a landing strip. It's a dried lake bed, except during rainstorms. It's foggy a lot. There is a landing strip on the other side of the island, about 5 miles away. And I was trying to get off the island on a certain day, and it looked like the plane wasn't coming, so I was going to hike over to the other side. on this trail. The research station is like 300 feet above sea level, and so I got to hiking and was really hurrying because I was carrying about 50 pounds back. It turns out I had the bag tied the wrong way in one of these frames, and but anyway, I got within about a mile where I was supposed to go, and the trail kind of got lost in fog, because I always get lost anyway. I took the wrong way, and ended up going the wrong way from the ranger station, and it was really a life experience. Wouldn't want to go through again, but I got dehydrated and so out of energy. I dumped my approximately 50 pounds of gear I was carrying and tried to walk, and I couldn't even walk. I had to sit down. I mean, it's just like air in a balloon. I absolutely cannot walk or couldn't do anything. But I had a cell phone with me, and I was worried about the people in the back where I'd left, because they'd be worried about me, because I was about 2 hours overdue getting to the ranger station. So I kept trying to call them, and I couldn't get through because of the terrain. I should say, by the way, going over there was one 300-foot, one 500-foot, one 800-foot hill that the one ranger hunter calls bumps, but that he takes a while. Anyway, I finally, there was still somewhat foggy. I saw these ravens over this one high point and got up there, and then the radio cell phone worked, and they said, "Oh, we're worried about you." And there's a young woman on the other side looking for you. So, but I didn't stay here. But I finally went down to the ranger station and opened the cabinet down there and got a couple of energy bars and some water. And then she came back, and we went back and got my gear. But anyway, it was a physical, and actually a mentally self-perspective, whatever. Because I didn't know what was going to happen. It was really just. It wasn't only physical, but just even almost mental. You just
you're exhausted
or something.
Yeah.
So that was.
That's an interesting lesson to always keep a power bar and an extra bottle of water in your pack.
Well,
among
I guess
things.
one more thing wasn't scary, but the first time we went up to Alaska, Major Professor and I flew from Colorado State, from Fort Collins, or we actually took a bus or something to Denver, and then flew to Seattle to spend the night, because in those days, this is in 1960, planes had fuel up in Seattle, now you can go non-stop. And so we got into Seattle about 7 or 8 that night. I was supposed to fly out to Anchorage at 8 o'clock the next morning. And this girl said, "We have a special flight tonight going to Anchorage. There's a bunch of fishermen who are taking them. Would you want to get on it? It's non-scheduled." We talked to her. We said, "No, well, we got room reservations. She's not going to stay here." So next morning we flew up to Anchorage. We got there, and Dr. Olson had a couple of messages. One from the secretary, one from his wife, said, "Are you still alive?" Because that plane that we could have got on the night crashed and killed everybody. So some things make you think.
Oh my God, that's an amazing story.
Yeah.
Huh.
But we didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
They didn't tell us we got on that morning, but that other flight. So it's just
things that happen.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the last question I was going to mention, I know that you one of your hobbies and your real interest is bird watching too. Is that something that, I mean, with all the hours that you work, do you just try to make time for that between jobs, or?
No, but I've really backed off in years, and I shouldn't. I do have his friends in Florida. He's a dentist, and he actually worked at First Seals and went to school, dental school at Lexington University, and we lost contact for 25 years and made some sense, and so every so often, including this winter, I'll probably go down to see him and his wife and go bird watching down there. But I haven't, but it's, I was going to school at Kansas State. We live in a rooming boarding house, and we're supposed to tell the lady if we weren't going to be there for breakfast. So some mornings field school said we're going bird watching. She says, "What do you do with them? Shoot them?" And we said, "No, it's just like a runabout, it's kind of game." Anyway, they're bird watching to some people. They don't understand it, but it's just an excuse to get out. It's like a game you play. But I backed off and played games.
Well, and one other hobby, I guess, that I thought of while you were talking is you obviously care about the University of Kentucky basketball team, and you mentioned you have season tickets, and I assume that when there's a home game and you're around, you go to every game. Is that right?
Yeah.
And any chance this year, you think?
It's hard to tell. They certainly got the makeup for it, and it's exciting. It's just course, but they have the tradition of winning so much, and that helps. We always want to be with winners. And it's just special. You either like them or you don't. I mean, it's just there's just been so many. I remember things. I remember way back, 30 years ago or something. I guess there were 4 of us went out to eat down the Kentucky River at a restaurant, and there was a basketball game on that night, and we stopped about halfway back, and this guy wrote us to have a beer, and had this little portable radio. Very exciting game going on in Kentucky. It was nip and tuck. I think they're playing Vanderbilt, and people come start crowding on, but there were no electric radios, listening to the game. We decided to leave, and we thought we were going to get mobbed because we took the game up.
Did you have to stay, or did you actually?
No, we left.
You left. That's great. Well, that's a
so that's what fans will do.
Yeah.
It's just something special.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, I want to thank you for sharing a little with us, and
I think most of it's true, but who knows?
Well, we can't really verify a lot of it, so we'll have to do. But more importantly, I want to thank you for coming and joining us at Christmas too.
Well, thanks for the
and I know that my dad and Kathy and I and Dave and Joy are really happy that you could join us.
Yeah, it's special to be invited.
That's great. Well, so Merry Christmas.
You need to reciprocate.
We will. I plan on doing it. Don't worry about it. Good. Thanks a lot, Gene.
Mark.